What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the first video of a 4-part mini-series where we cover every single position in FPL, starting with defenders. And the idea is to rank the best options at every single price point. So no matter whether you need an expensive defender, a mid-price defender, or a cheap defender, I've got you covered. And obviously, we are looking at the start of the season. We're kind of looking at game weeks 1 to 6. We don't really need to look any further than that because we'll have wildcards and transfers and things like that along the way. So if you want to see this video for the other positions, midfielders, forwards and goalkeepers, make sure to give this one a like, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them, and let's jump into it. So we'll start off with the most expensive price point, which is 7.5 million. Of course, there's only one defender at that price, which is Trent Alexander-Arnold, and we don't need to spend a huge amount of time on him. We know how good he is, right? He's playing for Liverpool. Out of all the teams in the league who are expected to keep a lot of clean sheets, they are going to be right up there. We also know how attacking he is. There's probably not too many other defenders in the league that have ever put up per 90 stats like he has for expected goals and expected assists. And even if they better him, nobody has done it over such a consistent time period. We know he's going to get clean sheets. We know he's going to get attacking returns. And most of all, if not best of all, he is pretty much nailed on. I know they have backup fullbacks at Liverpool in Tsimikas and obviously Calvin Ramsey. But one of the reasons Nico Williams has left is to get game time because it's so difficult to get in ahead of Trent because of what he offers to Liverpool. So I think he's incredible. I think it's hard to leave out. People talk about being brave and leaving him out. Ultimately, I just want points, and this guy's going to deliver. Okay, so the idea is when there's more than one player at a specific price point, I'm going to order them. So we're going to have best and second best in this case, and then there'll be third best when there's 3 or more. So I do have Robertson slightly ahead of Cancelo. For what it's worth, there's almost nothing in it. These are both brilliant picks, and I would expect both of them to do better than kind of the £7 million options in midfield and attack. I know you can't directly compare, but I would expect them to outscore those players across a whole season. When it comes on to an attacking level, they're both very similar. We look at those opening 6 fixtures, there's plenty of clean sheets for both sides as well. So the only thing I could kind of think of to split the two, and realistically, I'm not even sure how much doubt I really have, but I guess it's just minutes. I know again that Tsimikas is there and he can play instead of Robertson, but you expect Robertson to start pretty much every game when he's fit, and unless there's like fixture congestion, which you don't get at the start of the season. Whereas with Cancelo, I guess there's just always that slight doubt. Will Pep change things around? If they buy Cucurella, will it always be Cancelo plus one of Cucurella or Walker, bearing in mind that Cancelo can play left or right? Or will there be games when Cucurella and Walker play as well? Like I said, it's just a very, very minor thing. And to be honest, if I had 3 other Liverpool players, Salah, Trent and Diaz, for example, I absolutely would have Cancelo in my team if I had 7 million to spend. So you shouldn't have any doubts about them. I was just trying to think of reasons to split them. But ultimately, you could probably put them on a level playing field. They're both really good. Maybe Robertson just slightly ahead, but hardly anything in it. So at 6.5 million, there's only one defender, and that is Virgil van Dijk. I've got to be honest, I don't rate him as a great pick early on. There's plenty of advantages. We know he has goal threat from set pieces, right? He's decent in the air. I do see him as nailed on. He's going to start pretty much every game when he's fit. I do think if the other centre-backs are fit, Klopp does have options, and I think he would trust the likes of Gomez and Konate and Matip to play together. But again, early on, Van Dijk's going to play every game, so there's nothing wrong with that. But when you compare him to the other defender price points, I think if you can find that 0.5 million, Cancelo and Robertson are much better options. And then for 0.5 million less, you can always go and get someone like Diaz at Man City, who are also going to keep plenty of clean sheets. And he's not bad in the air either, right? It's not like he has no attacking threat. So I just feel like 6.5 million feels like an awkward price point. Again, Van Dijk is brilliant, and he'll probably outscore a lot of the attacking options for 6.5 million or less. But I just think as a defender pick, there's better options to go for, at least early on. Later on, when prices change, maybe Van Dijk's price goes down a little bit, Robertson's and Trent starts going up, and there's a bigger gap, potentially we go for him. But I think early on, I just don't really rate him as a great pick. So now we get to the price points with a few more options, and I do think for 6 million, Reece James is the out-and-out best option. He's one of those players that if he was priced at 6.5 or 7 million, I'd still be considering him for my team. And at 6 million, he's pretty much locked into my draft. I think him, Trent and Salah are the only ones, barring injury, that I'm pretty sure, anyway, are going to make my Game Week 1 squad. So I do really rate him. Whoever plays on the left or right for Chelsea in that wing-back system is always going to be fairly attacking. We know that Reece James, although I know some people were frustrated with the 0s and 1s he got in some game weeks, he did also get some weeks where he absolutely smashed it, and I'd hope he could do that a little bit more consistently this season. I've colour-coded the fixtures based on their attacking threat, right? So how likely are they, the teams, to get a clean sheet? And the fixtures do look somewhat difficult for Chelsea, but given how good Chelsea are, you still expect plenty of defensive returns and plenty of attacking returns for James and Chilwell as well. Now, the reason I've put James ahead is just a slight fitness concern. For what it's worth, I do think that Chilwell likely starts the season and probably plays pretty regularly with a week in between games for rest. But there was a question from Late Riser, who does the FPL Wire on YouTube, to a guy called Ben Ransom, who's following Chelsea around, and he asked whether he thought Chilwell would be fit enough for game week 1. And he said, if I'm honest, I think he looked a little bit behind the other players. Last week we saw an open training session in the afternoon, which he sat out as he'd already trained in the morning on an individual program. But he did go on to say there's plenty of time to build fitness ahead of game week 1. So I think they'll both probably play, which is why I rate them really highly. I just think James is slightly ahead of Chilwell. You could make an argument that Diaz could be higher than both, maybe higher than Chilwell as well, because for defensive returns, Man City are right up there, right? They are the best team in terms of clean sheet potential, and there's lots of really good fixtures for Man City early on. Diaz should be pretty much nailed, good enough goal threat as well. But I think if all three of these players were going to play every minute for every game in the first 6, I probably would just have James and Chilwell ahead. But in terms of kind of reliability and steady returns, Diaz is proper decent, and I do really like him. And I know a lot of people said in my recent draft video, why have you not got Cancelo? Of course, if you've got $1 million to spare, you go for Cancelo. But if you're just trying to back those City clean sheets, Diaz is about as good as it gets. So at 5.5 million, not a huge amount of options. I haven't put John Stones on here because I think if everyone's fit, we could just see Diaz and Laporte start the season as well. We'll obviously have to monitor that. If John Stones is starting regularly for Man City, then I do really like him for 0.5 million less than Diaz, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Perisic, I think, is a brilliant option. Again, we're looking at prices that I predicted players to come in at. I do think Perisic is good enough to be a £6 million player. We really need to see him start getting some minutes in the Spurs pre-season games, though. That hasn't happened yet at the time of recording. There's still like 18 days to go till the season starts, so it could happen. But if he is maybe not quite up to full fitness, and Sessegnon's been playing quite a lot, we might see Sessegnon start the season and then Perisic come in. It could only be like a couple of games, but obviously for our game week 1 squads, that might be a slight worry. Again, for what it's worth, if Perisic has played a good amount of pre-season minutes and looks fit, I do think he will be Conte's #1 choice. I don't think there's really any debate about that. He is going to be ahead of Sessegnon in the pecking order, but let's see what happens. Again, fixtures looking really good. Chelsea away is the one I'd be slightly concerned about, but ultimately as a first 6, it's looking pretty good for clean sheets for Spurs. I'd be fairly confident they'll get a few there, and I also think they're going to improve this year again in attack and in defence under Conte, especially with that full pre-season. So let's keep an eye on minutes. Annoyingly, as I go to record this, Koulibaly is still not priced in FPL. My assumption is he'll come in at 5.5 million, the same as Thiago Silva, in which case he does go ahead in the pecking order because I do think his minutes will be more secure. Thiago Silva is obviously going to be another year older. He is a bit like a Rolls Royce, right? He was brilliant last year when he played, and he did play pretty regularly, but I think if there's a chance that someone's going to miss out on minutes, it could be him. And if they do make new signings, that kind of increase of chance of missing out does become bigger. So if Koulibaly's 5.5, you could look at him as an okay option for Chelsea, but I still think I'd rather spend 0.5 more and get James or Chilwell or Diaz or someone like that. And if Koulibaly comes in at 6, I just don't think he's a very good option at all. Not early on. Again, I think those other players I talked about for 6 million are better. So 5.5 million defenders, not a lot of choice. I think if he's fit, Perisic is out and out the best option. Maybe Stones if Laporte is injured or something like that at the start of the season, but otherwise it's just too many concerns around minutes. So for £5 million defenders, I've gone for Gabriel as the best option. Obviously at Arsenal, good defence with some pretty good fixtures to open. I think Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham and Villa, all potential for clean sheets. With the £6 million defenders, I put both James and Chilwell there because I think there is a conversation to be had about doubling up. I don't really think that with Arsenal. I think if you're going to use a defender spot with Arsenal, you just take up one. There's just too much value to put 2 Arsenal defenders in there in my opinion. And I think when you look at maybe minutes concerns versus Zinchenko or injury concerns versus Tierney, Gabriel probably is the best option. Now, on a recent draft video I did, a lot of people said I should just save 0.5 million and get Tomiyasu instead. And I agree, if you're going to bench that player a lot and just use them if or when you get injuries or a player misses out for whatever reason, if you're going to play them regularly and you've got 0.5 million to spare, I do think that overall Gabriel is just a better option than Tomiyasu. So it depends how much you're going to play them. In second, I've gone for Dier at Spurs because I just think Spurs fixtures for defensive returns all look pretty good. And I do expect now, a full Conte pre-season, and he's managing them from the start, from the get-go. I do expect Spurs to improve both in attack and defence. So I would like a piece of that action. The problem is we really want the wing-backs, but there's a lot of competition. And I don't know how sure I would be about one player consistently starting. And obviously, I've already talked about Perisic. There's Sessegnon there as well. At 5 million, of course, you have Doherty. And if I thought that Doherty was going to start the first 4 or maybe the first 6 fixtures, like start every game, he would be top of this list, and top of this list by quite a distance. But I just have those concerns over rotation, right? Lucas Moura has played wing-back in pre-season. Jed Spence is probably going to come in. He might have already been signed by the time this video goes out. Emerson Royale's there as well. Now, if we look at last season, Doherty was great, and from an attacking point of view, he is better than Emerson Royale, and the wing-backs under Conte do have to attack a lot, but it's just that slight doubt. So if you're less doubtful than me and you think Doherty's going to play a lot, put him in because he'll be absolutely brilliant. And if there is any inclination that's going to happen, he will be in my Game Week 1 draft, I suspect. But let's wait and see. Otherwise, you've got to look at a centre-back. They're not necessarily quite as attractive because I think goal threat-wise, not quite as good. You could argue that Romero should be in here ahead of Dier because he's absolutely nailed on. And obviously now they've got Lenglet as well. So there's just another centre-back to cause maybe some possible rotation. But I think Dier improved so much under Conte. I do expect him to keep playing. And I do think his goal threat is a little bit better than Romero. It's just a minutes thing there. If you want to be absolutely sure, you go for Romero. Maybe chance those yellow cards a little bit more. If you think Dier is still pretty much nailed on, I think he probably is the best option if you're not going to go for a wing back. And then I've put Trippier in. I wasn't quite sure about who to put in third place. There's been a lot of talk on my videos that I haven't talked enough about Newcastle players. Why is Trippier not in my team? I guess I don't necessarily rate the Newcastle defence as high as other people. I also think that people are over expecting attacking returns from Trippier. I don't think he's sometimes when people talk about him, it's as if he's attacking as like a Doherty or a Trent or a Reece James, and he's just not. I know he's got set pieces and that helps, but I don't think he's quite as attacking as people think he is. So that's why I've not talked about him too much. As a 5 million option, though, he is absolutely nailed for Newcastle as long as he's fit. And I do think there's definitely some fixtures in the opening 6 there could be clean sheets from. So Forest on the opening day, maybe even Brighton as well, Wolves and Palace. Obviously, game week 3 and 5 are very tough, but at least he's nailed, and maybe some attacking potential as well. And obviously for 5 million, you could rotate him with a 4.5 million defender or maybe a cheaper attacker as well, outside of those kind of game week 3 and 5 fixtures. So I do like Trippier, but I think for 5 million, there are better options. But for a lot of you, you think that Trippier is the best, and that's fair enough. There's some very good defensive fixtures in that opening 6. So I feel like the £4.5 million best defenders kind of pick themselves. I've done a whole video on cheap defenders, so I won't spend a huge amount of time on these ones again. But I think Tomiyasu is the best, right? He's in that Arsenal defence, which looks really good. Decent fixtures as well, we just spoke about with Gabriel, and he should be basically nailed on. I don't think his attacking threat is that great, but in terms of defensive returns, he should get a good few in the opening 6 fixtures. I've got Johnny just ahead of Dant. While Semedo is out, him and Aït-Nouri should play fairly regularly, unless something changes, unless Wolves obviously bring in some new players. And from watching Johnny in the past, he is pretty attacking, right? Maybe the injuries have impacted him a little bit, but I wouldn't let that concern me too much, right? So I do think from an attacking potential, he's right up there. And there are some fixtures there like Leeds, Fulham, Bournemouth and Southampton. You could see him getting potential attacking returns in. Whether or not Wolves will get a huge amount of defensive returns remains to be seen. Jose Sarr did bail them out quite a lot last year, but perhaps they'll improve. Again, there is talk talk about them moving to a back four. That might help them from an attacking perspective, maybe not quite as much from a defensive one, but we'll have to wait and see. I think from an excitement level, Johnny is kind of right up there, right? A 4.5 million defender who is attacking, I do like him. And then I've got Dunk, kind of Mr. Reliable, fairly steady returns, decent goal threat. There's maybe a few fixtures in the opening six you wouldn't go out of your way to play him in, but if it's someone to sit on the bench that can come on, maybe get you an attack and return, also playing in a very good defence in Brighton as well, then Dunk is right up there. If I'm looking at the rest of the list, like Everton, I'm just not sure how many defensive returns there are there for them. Like Leicester defenders could be proper decent this year, but I don't like a lot of their opening fixtures. I think maybe they are one for the early wild card. Someone like Sofao at West Ham could also be decent. So there's a lot of 4.5 million options, but I feel like these three are probably the best. So as it stands, it looks like we're probably only going to have one £4 million playing defender, and that is Nico Williams, who has, of course, moved from Liverpool to Nottingham Forest, who, by the way, do play a three at the back system. So as a wing-back, maybe there's some potential for attack and returns. Ultimately, we shouldn't be expecting another John Lundstram, right? I don't expect a huge amount of attack and returns or many defensive returns either, especially early on. Like, you look at those fixtures, Man City and Spurs, very difficult. West Ham at home, not easy either. Then the other two games are both away. So I don't think there's much chance of defensive returns there. But we have to remember what Nico Williams is. He's a £4 million defender that then enables the rest of the team. It allows you to spend more money elsewhere. There's no other position in FPL apart from goalkeepers where you can get a £4 million player. What I will say is, this year, given how much value there is in defence, given how good those 4.5 million options are as well, I don't think it's a given that you have to put Nico Williams in your team. In previous seasons, where we've played three at the back or maybe four at the back at most, then Nico Williams would be like gold dust. We'd definitely have him in. I don't think you have to do it this year, but as it stands, he probably is the best 4 million. So there we go. That was the best defenders at every single price point. If you did enjoy that and you want to see me do this kind of format for the other positions, so goalkeepers, midfielders and forwards, leave me a comment below. Make sure you hit that like button as well. And of course, subscribe so that you don't miss when those videos go out. I just think it's a pretty decent format to talk about a lot of players across lots of different price points. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I will be back tomorrow with another video. I will catch you then.